I know exactly who I am.
Hello, Jason. How are you?
Hey, Roman, I'm pretty good, thank you. Yeah.
Good. Congratulations on Archie, which is now streaming on BritBox, the show that chronicled the life of the late, great Cary Grant. I very much enjoyed it. Now, as I understand it, Cary, or Archibald, I should say, was born in Bristol. You were born in Liverpool, where the majority of this show was filmed. How extensive was your research? Is there a Bristol dialect that you had to adopt? And were you yourself a fan of Cary Grant prior to taking on this role?
Oh, tell me, that's a whole barrage of questions. I'm going to try and work out which one to answer first. Yes, I'm from Liverpool, and one of the great challenges of taking on this role was that my Liverpool accent is barely buried beneath the surface. And I got there, and everybody was talking like that to me. That's what the crew members talk like, and the makeup woman, and the people looking after the trailers and the caterers. And I had to be very careful not to pick up my native accent again. And I went to university in Bristol, but by the time I play him from his late 30s to his 80s. The Bristol accent was nowhere to be heard. He had evolved this kind of hybrid mid-Atlantic sound, born of the kid who wanted to erase his past and erase his past accent, and who aspired to sounding like the best American actors, but the American actors at the time all trying to sound like upper-class Englishmen. So it's a kind of a Frankensteinian cocktail of sounds that I had to mimic.
Were you a fan of Cary Grant prior to this?
No, I wasn't. And I wasn't sure I'd seen any of his films. And so I sat down to watch them all, and I realized I had seen all of his films, and I just forgotten because I saw them when I was a kid. He's an era before me. And at first, the early films, he was a vaudeville acting, and he was a guy who arrived from doing carnival barking and still walking, and I could see that. And I thought, what's the fuss ever? Why did he turn out? And then bit by bit, as I watched more of the films, I couldn't take my eyes off him. And I realized he had something. I don't know what it was. It wasn't an ability to transform. He wasn't a chameleon. He shaped, as he became the bigger star, he developed and owned and produced the films. So there was something like the same character or a very similar character in all the films, this unflappable epitome, this Mount Rushmore of masculinity. But as I was watching the films, of course, I was learning who he really was, and that he was the very polar opposite of all the qualities he was choosing to project on screen. So it was very interesting watching him. And he did it so brilliantly. And of course, it makes perfect sense that the reason he did it so brilliantly is it was all the things he was hoping he could be, but really wasn't in life. And all the ways that he struggled in life, all the areas that he was extremely fragile and very flappable are what led him to create this unflappable character on screen.
Now, you've played historical figures or real life characters before, like Michael Steele in Black Hawk Down, Georgy Zukov in Death of Stalin. When playing such roles, I'm sure it comes with added pressure, because there are people out there who are familiar with those characters, and perhaps they might be overcritical, saying, oh, the real Cary Grant wouldn't do that, or the real Cary Grant would do that differently. So when embodying such historical figures as Cary Grant, how daunting was that experience, and how did you overcome that pressure of criticism?
Well, at first I thought the way to overcome it is just not take the job. It's very easy. I was offered it, and I went, no, you've got to be mad. You have to be an idiot. But then I was told about Cary Grant, but I saw it was called Archie, and it was written by Jeff Pope. Jeff Pope's a guy with a long history of making brilliant drama out of real life events and real life people. So I read it, and I thought, oh, wait, it's not about Cary Grant. He struggled to play Cary Grant. He couldn't keep Cary Grant up when he got home, and he had 5 marriages and many broken relationships, and he was torn apart by self-hatred and his temper and alcoholism and PTSD, OCD, ADHD, all the rest of it. And his childhood was just such a catastrophic mess of abandonment and abuse and neglect. I thought, okay, well, hold on a second. That relieves some of the pressure on me, because if people think they're watching the guy from the movies, hopefully they'll realize pretty early on, oh, it's not the guy from the movies. Also, anyone who thinks they're actually going to watch Cary Grant in a series about him should go and watch Cary Grant films. If they want to see what we think, having spoken to all the best sources, spent a lot of time with his family and done a lot of research, what we think was driving him so into such pain and depression, and to follow him on a journey until he gets to some ease in his life, then watch our show, which is about Archie Leach. So at some point I had to go, well, I'm going to do this job. I know he's not the guy on screen, and fuck it. There are people who are sharpening the knives already. So, and I've seen some of the comments online. They go, well, it's fine, but he's not Cary Grant. No, I'm not Cary Grant. Well done. IQ of 1,000,000. But it's a pretty interesting take on how you can destroy yourself if you don't heal the wounds of your childhood. And what can heal you? For him, I think what healed him was that he sought love everywhere. I mean, he was a male escort in New York. He was starving, he was hungry, and he learned to please people, to use his sex, to use his body, to use his beauty. And then in the end, he did it so successfully on a global stage, hundreds of millions of people worshipped him. You know, they wanted to be him or they wanted to be with him, either one. And it made him feel even emptier and even more unlovable. And so people he did form a relationship with, he drove away with obsessive control and other things. He made them abandon him. Even he said this about himself. He made them abandon him. He forced them to leave before they could do what his mother did, which is abandon him. And what saved him, I think, began to save him, was he had a child. And he realized he was looking for love his whole life, and it was never going to be enough. But he started to give love. He started to just love this creature. I remember the same thing when my kids arrived, going, it's the most uncomplicated love. And this person doesn't expect anything from you, and you can't expect anything from them. You just feel it, and it's going out, and you're not looking for something coming in. So that's what I thought. I thought, well, we're telling that story, and if anybody else is looking for a mimic act in Vegas, then go fuck itself.
I love it. You know, I got to ask you, Jason, about your physical transformation on this show, which is remarkable, by the way. Talk to me about what the makeup department did to help mold your face a bit. I noticed that the older age Cary Grant, you kind of look tan for that, but in the younger years, you kind of look more like yourself. Talk to me about the makeup prosthetics for that.
Well, actually, he was dark brown through his entire life. When he first arrived in Hollywood, someone said, you want to be browner than the other people on screen. He took that to heart. He was a man of incredible extremes in every area. And he tanned with one of those silver reflector things. Always, he was literally outdoor furniture, dark brown, polished color, all of his life, not just at the end. And so I had a fake tan on. He had a very noticeable, memorable dimple chin. It looked like a baby doll's butt, you know. I mean, it's extraordinary. He's considered one of the most handsome men that ever lived. But if you look at those photographs close up, you're like, wow, that's a big old thing on his chin. We made a slightly smaller one. That was stuck on every day. He had big moon-like brown eyes, so I had contact lenses in. And he had different hair for me, so I had different wigs for different ages. When I get older, he got a bit wider. So I have very, very subtle prosthetics on to make my face wider. So there's that. And then there's the fact that I'm wearing the greatest suits known to mankind. I have the Savile Row tailors, the greatest tailors in the world, made my suits, 4 or 5 fittings for each one. And it's not just that they're good suits. They take my slightly hunched and twisted older body, and they could compensate for any of my humps and make me look like I was standing bolt upright and that I have a perfect physique. Because as Diane Cannon told me, who I spoke to at enormous length, who was incredibly candid about this devastated emotional landscape inside Cary, she would also throw in every now and again, but you have to understand, he was so beautiful. We would walk into a room, honey, and everybody wanted him. He had the perfect body. And I'm like, okay, Dan, that's really not helpful. You just tell me something I can use. I mean, you should have seen him naked. I'm like, I know, again, not useful. Thanks very much. Let's go back to the other stuff. So I had a lot of help. My point is, I had a lot of help from everybody.
Now, Jason, I gotta ask, what crosses your mind usually when you think of the term the golden age of cinema or the golden age of Hollywood? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing that Hollywood today no longer holds such prominence? Or do you sometimes wish that we could somehow get that prominence back to life again?
I don't know. I was born in 1963 when it was all over. I don't know. I think about it the same as anybody else. What are you talking about? What films are you talking about? I mean, what I miss is the fact that there used to be far fewer choices for entertainment. So everybody was watching the same thing at the same time. So if there were films, everybody had seen certain films. And if it was on TV when there were fewer channels, there was something that bonded nations together or people together because we were all watching the same things at the same time. But no, do I wish everybody was making Casablanca again? No, I don't. I wish everyone was making Mean Streets again and, you know, The Godfather again and Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. All those great films of the 70s, but that's not the golden age of Hollywood. The 70s was the time when there was an extraordinary flourishing of independent film funded by studios. And then Jaws came along and blockbusters destroyed all that. So
the final question, what do you think the audiences would learn new about Cary Grant from watching the show that they probably had not discovered before?
Everything. I don't think they'll know any of this stuff about Cary. I certainly didn't know. I think they'll get a real insight, not just into him, who he was, this biggest star in the world for 30 years, but into the other people that we worship today that come through our phones that we think, my God, they're perfect. Look at them with their hundreds of millions of followers. Their life is just golden. And just be reminded, it's bullshit. And the more famous they are, the more they probably sought it. And the more they sought it was because something was going wrong in the first place. All right, for my fans at home, everybody go check out ARCHIE Miniseries, now streaming on BritBox. Jason, thank you for talking to me and congratulations. Thanks, Rama. Nice to see you.
I know exactly who I am.